This is a CBS News special report. I'm Norah O'Donnell here in Washington, and we are coming on the air as special counsel Jack Smith is delivering remarks on the indictment of former President Donald Trump any moment from now. Just over an hour and a half ago, the 38-count indictment was unsealed, 37 of them specifically targeting Mr. Trump. And the accusations made in this indictment are stunning. They allege that the National Archives repeatedly demanded that the former president turn over classified documents beginning in May of 2021. The charges against the former president include willful retention of national defense information, conspiracy to obstruct justice, withholding a document or record, corruptly concealing a document or record, and concealing a document in a federal investigation, scheme to conceal, and false statements and representation.
Okay, you're not going to believe what just dropped. A federal judge has just ripped open the seal on a batch of evidence tied directly to President Trump's legal troubles.
And almost immediately, Congress has gone into full-on meltdown mode, demanding consequences.
We're talking within a single day of this material being unsealed. You've got members of Congress openly talking about Trump being arrested. Yeah, you heard that right. Not more hearings, not another round of we're looking into it, but actual calls for arrest. And what makes this even more insane is that those calls aren't just coming from Democrats.
You've got voices on both sides of the aisle saying, this can't be ignored.
That almost never happens in Washington anymore. When Democrats are shouting for accountability and some Republicans are basically saying, yeah, something has to happen, you've entered completely new territory. This isn't the usual DC theater. Something genuinely different is happening right now. Before we break down everything that's going on, I want you to watch this speech from Jack Smith.
Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with felony violations of our national security laws, as well as participating in a conspiracy to obstruct justice. This indictment was voted by a grand jury of citizens in the Southern District of Florida, and I invite everyone to read it in full to understand the scope and the gravity of the crimes charged. The men and women of the United States intelligence community and our armed forces dedicate their lives to protecting our nation and its people. Our laws that protect national defense information are critical to the safety and security of the United States, and they must be enforced. Violations of those laws put our country at risk. Adherence to the rule of law is a bedrock principle of the Department of Justice.
Your first reaction is probably, here we go again, another Trump story, another investigation, another political circus. That's how it usually feels. But what makes this situation totally different is what we're dealing with. Sealed files. These were records judges intentionally kept out of public view, supposedly for very serious reasons. And now someone with the authority to do it has decided that the American people deserve to see what's been buried. Think about how extreme this has to be for Congress to go from zero to demanding arrests in under 24 hours. Congress doesn't move that fast. The only way both parties start talking about real consequences this quickly is if the evidence behind the scenes is absolutely explosive. The only way you get bipartisan outrage is if they all saw the same thing and walked away with the same reaction. This is bad, really bad. That kind of unity doesn't happen in normal political conditions. The timeline here is crucial. Go back to January. That's when the Justice Department began filing the paperwork to get special counsel. The Jack classified documents report into the hands of Congress. Democrats were already pushing for full transparency. They wanted everything out in the open. They wanted the American people to see the entire picture of what investigators found. And now, out of nowhere, a federal judge steps in and unseals the underlying evidence itself. Suddenly, the careful staged rollout the DOJ seemed to be planning turns into a full-blown uncontrolled release of material that was supposed to stay locked up. It's like someone kicked open the door instead of turning the handle slowly. That move changed how Congress was going to react. Representative Jamie Raskin jumped on X and basically said, if there's real criminal conduct here, the Department of Justice can't just sit on its hands. He wasn't talking about more slow-moving committees or years of back and forth. He was demanding actual movement, not the usual bureaucratic stalling, not debates about jurisdiction, while the public loses interest. He's saying straight up, if the evidence is as serious as it seems, DOJ has a duty to act. And this isn't some backbencher tweeting. This is a guy with real influence on key committees directly telling the department that inaction is not an option. That's a member of Congress using his platform to call out the government publicly for dragging its feet. Then you've got Senator Lisa Murkowski, a Republican, making it clear that sealed files shouldn't be used to cover up corruption. She's saying the American people deserve the truth, no matter how high up that corruption goes. Let that sink in. A Republican senator is essentially saying party loyalty doesn't get to override honesty here. That's not something you normally hear when the allegations involve a Republican president. When a Republican is willing to risk blowback from her own party to say, we need to expose this. That tells you material is not just embarrassing, it's genuinely disturbing. That's the kind of statement that says, I've seen what's in there and it's too serious to protect. So what are we actually looking at? You've got evidence that was never supposed to see the light of day. Federal judges deciding to expose it anyway. Democrats demanding answers, Republicans breaking ranks to say the truth matters, more than shielding the president. And a Congress that basically lost its mind the moment they got a look at the unsealed files. This is one of those inflection points where everything shifts, where something that seemed politically impossible just a few days ago suddenly becomes not only possible, but maybe unavoidable. Now, let's talk about the classified documents piece because that's the core of this. The broad outline has been known for a while. Trump had classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. That part isn't up for debate anymore. Investigators searched the property, found the materials, and the courts acknowledged that the real unknowns have always been what exactly were in those documents, why did he have them? What, if anything, did he do with them? And was there any intent to obstruct justice or jeopardize national security? Those are the questions that have been sitting inside those sealed files. Those are the questions that judges kept behind closed doors. And now, piece by piece, those answers are spilling out into public view.
But here's where this goes beyond boxes of papers in a storage room. This doesn't stop at mishandled documents. It ties into everything else that's been swirling around Trump's orbit. It overlaps with January 6th investigation. It touches on allegations of coordination. It opens the door for questions about who else knew, who else participated, and what kind of communication was happening inside Trump's circle and the Trump organization. Once you unseal files like these, you don't just get one neat little storyline, you get a web. You get strands running into multiple investigations, touching multiple people across multiple years.
That's exactly why Congress is reacting the way it is. That's why you're hearing people openly use the word arrest. Whatever's in those files isn't just isolated misconduct. It appears to connect dots between different events, different actors, and different alleged violations of the law. All of this is unfolding while Trump is in his second term as president. This isn't about a former leader being relitigated years after leaving office. This is happening while he is sitting in the Oval Office, while his administration is rolling out policies on the economy, immigration, foreign affairs, everything. And then this bombshell lands right in the middle of it. Suddenly, his entire presidency is overshadowed by this scandal. That's why this moment matters so much. Sealed evidence being cracked open. His agenda, every bill, every initiative, every negotiation is now happening under this cloud. Congress rocketing from to arrest talk in under a day. This is the kind of thing that can alter the course of a presidency. Stay with me because we're about to unpack what's actually inside these files, what Congress is demanding, why this goes way beyond just another Trump controversy. Let's clear up the biggest misunderstanding first. A lot of people think this is just about documents being stored where they shouldn't have been, as if it's all about sloppiness or bad record keeping. That's not what's going on. This is about an investigation that appears to have uncovered serious potential criminal conduct. The government now trying to decide what to do with that knowledge. The classified documents probe has been going on for years. This wasn't a quick look. The FBI literally executed a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. Agents went room to room. They seized materials. They cataloged what they found. That's all established fact. The part that hasn't been fully visible until now is the scope of what those documents revealed. They suggested about intent, about obstruction, national security, and about whom else might have been involved. That's what lived inside the sealed material. That's what judges kept out of public view until now. And in January 2025, something changed. The Justice Department itself started moving to get Jack classified documents. That's overhaul. This was DOJ saying Congress needs to see this. Democrats were pressing for total transparency, arguing that the public had a right to know what the investigation turned up, and DOJ was effectively agreeing. The courts looked at all of that and concluded that the findings couldn't stay buried. Judges signed off on unsealing evidence that had previously locked down, balancing security concerns against the public's right, and they concluded that disclosure was necessary. Once that happened, the story changed because when you open up those files,
You're not just revealing a list of documents. You're revealing investigators' analysis.
their conclusions about intent and motive, their theories of the case, their mapping of connections between individuals,
Organizations and events.
if Jack Smith's report contains evidence or even strong indications that Trump or members of his inner circle didn't just mishandle documents, but knowingly violated the law, you can see why Congress is reacting the way it is. Rasson's statement captures this perfectly. It basically says that the DOJ cannot just sit there if criminal conduct has been clearly documented.
Later. That's essentially either you prosecute or we're going to have to take matters into our own hands.
Coming from someone with his seniority, that's not empty rhetoric. That's a warning shot. On the Republican side, Mausk's comments signal something major, too. She's not known for jumping into every controversy. When she breaks from her party, it's usually because she thinks something cuts deeper than politics. For her to say the American people must see what's in those files tells you she believes the content is deeply serious.
That's not a statement you make if what you saw was vague or flimsy.
That's something you say when you know people aren't going to shrug this off once they see it. So the real story here isn't Trump had documents. That's old news. It's
How they were handled and who else might have been involved. It's about intent. It's about whether laws were knowingly broken. It's about whether there was coordination with other action,
including everything surrounding January 6th. These files don't exist in a vacuum. Touch January 6th. They touch potential coordination. They touch the Trump organization. They touch people inside and outside the administration. Unsealing them doesn't just reveal one set of facts. It lights up an entire network of connections that prosecutors have been tracing for years. You don't trigger an emergency political firestorm over misplaced paperwork. You do it when what you see looks like deliberate, serious wrongdoing. The fact that we're seeing signs of bipartisan concern, Democrats naturally are going to push for accountability here. Normally, the instinct is to close ranks around their guy, delay, deflect, and minimize. Some of them start saying, no, this actually looks bad. That means the evidence is strong enough to make party loyalty waver. The Justice Department's role is critical here, too. Jack Smith wasn't some random figure. He was the special counsel with effectively full authority to investigate Trump's handling of classified. He had the backing, the resources. His findings were serious enough that DOJ didn't try to hide them. They said Congress needs to see this. That's not normal. DOJ usually guards its files carefully, especially when there are national security angles. For them to push for Congress to get the full picture, they knew this wasn't something that could stay in the dark. Now that judges have gone even further and ordered the evidence itself unsealed, Congress has the whole package: the files, the analysis, the conclusions. Within 24 hours, lawmakers are demanding action. That speed alone tells you how intense the material must be. This isn't rumor territory. This isn't anonymous leaks and speculative think pieces. This is an official federal investigation with official findings signed off by federal judges now sitting in front of officials and shaking Washington. So what does all of this mean in practical terms, especially right now in 2025 while Trump is actively sitting in the Oval Office? First, the evidence is real and official. This isn't conspiracy content or partisan talking points. These are materials produced by the government's own legal apparatus. Investigators, prosecutors, judges. You can argue about the interpretation, but you can't argue that the evidence doesn't exist. It's in the record. And it completely disrupts what Trump is trying to do as president. He's trying to manage the economy, push immigration policy, negotiate with foreign leaders, all the usual stuff that comes with the job. And now this is looming over everything. This dominates headlines, consumes airtime, and forces Congress to fixate on it. It drains political oxygen from everything else his administration wants to accomplish. It makes allies nervous. It pushes moderates to reconsider how closely they want to be tied to him. You can't have a situation where half of Congress is calling for action on serious criminal allegations. Still pretend we're in a normal environment. You can't move major legislation while this is hanging over everything. The scandal becomes the story. And in Washington, once the scandal becomes the story. Third, the fact that this is breaking through party lines makes it far more dangerous for Trump. Washington is deeply tribal. Most of the time, party comes first. When they saying the truth matters more than protecting one person, it signals that the crisis has stepped outside. That's when you're looking at an institutional problem, not just a partisan fight. So what happens next? Congress now has options, and none of them are simple. They can push DOJ to prosecute based on Jack Smith's findings, mouth up his formal investigations, and call witnesses under oath, move toward impeachment proceedings. Demand Trump resign or step aside, or try to stall and hope public attention fades. But that's politically dangerous now that the evidence is out and they've already called for action. Doing nothing is almost off the Netflix at this point. The evidence is public. Mike, members from both parties have already said it's serious and demands a response. If Congress just shrugs and walks away, they'll be roasted by voters, by the media, and by history. That would look like the government giving a green light to whatever allegedly happened. Usual rules of protection and party loyalty don't hold when the evidence is this heavy and this public. We are in uncharted territory and nobody really knows how this ends. What we do know is that from this point forward, everything in American politics is going to be shaped, at least what was inside those unsealed files and how Congress and the Justice Department choose to respond.